Not the Footy Show.
There is nothing cloak and dagger about the Gold Coast's interest in David Fifita, the Titans' head of performance. Mal Meninga today openly admitted the club would love to sign the young Broncos star.
You can bank a team around you, and he would bring other talent to the club. But, you know, our junior systems are going really well. We've got a lot of talent on the coast. Dave himself grew up there with Kiva Park, you know. So, I mean, yeah, no, we'll be certainly in the picture if he become available.
Fifita up there in Brisbane, Buzz, will he stay at the Broncos or will he accept that massive deal from the Titans?
That is the most ridiculous offer in the history of rugby league.
It's hard to believe the Broncos season could have got any worse, but today it did. The one-time glamour club couldn't convince David Fifita to stay, the star forward signing with the Titans.
It was an offer David Fifita couldn't refuse. The 20-year-old today inking a 3-year, $3.5 million deal with the Titans starting from 2021.
Hee-hi-ho-fum, hee-hi-ho-fum, hee-hi-ho-hum. I'm a most amazing guy am I.
G'day everybody, welcome to episode 220 of Not The Footy Show. We had a couple of weeks off. Who knows where Cocksmith is, but you've got the best two anyway, let's be honest. We've got Matty Duncan back, Mr. Peninsula. Welcome back to the show. I'm Warrick Nicolson, mate. It's good to have you back on board under interesting circumstances.
Thank you, Wozniacki. Very good to be back. Somewhat off the bench, but no, good to be here. And yeah, look, since I was last on, things haven't really improved for the Broncos.
I think that's probably the big reason why I haven't put you through another edition since we talked about, is this rock bottom for the Broncos? Well, it wasn't. They found other lengths or depths to go to, and Supercoach Seabold's still in charge up there, mate. We'll get your thoughts on that relatively soon. We think Cocksmith's sunning himself on a beach somewhere. That is the rumour. If you go to his Instagram handle, you can see that for yourself. That's the only response I got to, do you want to do a podcast today? And I got a picture of a foot in the sand on the beach. So I figured that was a no. So, Matty, you got the call.
But yeah.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. But we have to talk about the big fish leaving Brisbane and going to the Gold Coast Titans, and that is David Fifita. And we'll jump into that in depth in a second. But we've also got our round 12 tips and a little bit here and there on other things that have happened. But this won't be a long podcast, even though you and I notorious, more so than Cocksmith really, are going long and talking forever. It's going to be a short one. We're looking at 25, 30 minutes max. Let's see if I actually hold ourselves to that, and we'll be back for more of episode 220 of Not The Footy Show right after this.
Not going to happen.
Not gonna happen. No, not gonna happen. Not gonna happen.
Not The Footy Show.
Okay, it's time to talk about your man Fifita, bud. David Fifita. A year ago, Supercoach Seabold was in a presser. I think it was before the Parramatta debacle in the semi-final. And the headline is, "We will not lose Fifita." Now, not only has he lost Fifita, they've lost pretty much every game since he said that. How do you feel about David Fifita taking up a 3-year deal worth reportedly $1.25 million, and he probably could have got 1.5 from the Gold Coast from next season? How does it feel to lose David Fifita?
It's been crazy times, it was a week ago, or was it 2 weeks ago, that the Broncos come out and said, no, we've got him for a year. He'll be with us next year, and we'll renegotiate again. There's some things around the manager, which is not uncommon in these days when people are looking to change managers. They sign a short-term deal or test. So we thought, okay, we've got a year. We're going to go through this for another 12 months. And then the news lobbed that he was off to the Titans, and look, probably the biggest Broncos to Gold Coast defection since probably Ray Herring. Went to the Gold Coast in 91.
Oh, come on. There was a couple more that happened around that time. I can't remember who they were. But
Herring, first ever Broncos premiership winning captain the 1990 reserve grade. So, yeah, and of course then went on after he stint at the Gold Coast to play for the Crushers and hit Mario in the head with the ball, the Falcon.
The pass heard round south east Queensland.
Great.
Yes, the great Ray Herring. There were some other moves, and that's something we will get into. You haven't really answered my question, though. How does it feel?
Oh, look, there's part of me that is obviously very disappointed. He looks like a once in a generation type player that can change a game. But look, it's not a great time for the Broncos, and you don't want to be caught up in a bidding war with the Gold Coast and tie up your salary cap and then be an ordinary team with a good player for a section of time. I can understand the Gold Coast going down this avenue, but look, as a Broncos fan, if you look at the big picture, and sometime at the moment we've kind of got to, look, when you don't have the results on the board at the moment where the Broncos could used to hang their hat on and say, look, we're the premier club in Queensland, you're going to play finals footy, take a pay cut. They don't have that bargaining chip at the moment. So, look, if money talks, he was going to go and he's gone. So, look, it's disappointing to lose a player like that, but I'm kind of glad they didn't go into a total bidding war with the Coast to keep him.
In that case, what was the magic figure that you wouldn't have gone above? Because he's apparently gone for 1.25. The number around the place 2 weeks ago was he was only 1.1 at the Titans and like 700 or 800 at the Broncos. Is that the figure you would have been happy with your Broncos paying?
Yeah, I think that's. I think obviously the Broncos, without knowing the figures and the rest of the salary cap figures, the Broncos come up with a number that they were comfortable with, and if they could match it, so be it, and you move on and look, try and find a half somewhere.
Actually, the funny thing is, you've got a lot of them. It's just
none that are very good.
Well, yeah, it brings us to the old age-old question: do you need a forward pack before you have halves? And one of the elements that's been interesting, and I love using that word, but from even just the commentary on Friday night, was Thurston was giving all the Broncos forwards a rap, and I'm thinking, you lost by 38 points. They lost by 38 points. I can't put that on the half. Like, I can't put it on the half.
Yeah. I thought that, and I'm a rap from Tommy Dearden, and I thought the structure that Dearden provided early was as good as we'd seen from the Broncos in weeks. So I think there's a lot of upside with Dearden, and I think long term you can build a team around a Dearden and a Haas, but you've just got to get the right pieces in the other 11 spots.
Yeah, it's just funny. I often look at what's the narrative at the end of the game, and I actually thought Milford looked pretty good in those first 20 minutes, chiming in on that left edge, and then by the end of the game he's the most useless player in the papers. I don't know. I just think that, don't get me wrong, he's not playing good football, but the way the narrative turns on a player, I think, is ridiculous.
From week to week, from half to half, it can be brutal. So
how did Tavita Pangai Jr. skate on the sin bin? I have not seen anything negative about that from those vaunted Brisbane papers about the reasons the Broncos are going no good. And he goes off, and when he got binned, that was the difference between the game being 20-8 and 46-8. It really was.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
No. Anyway, we're back on Fifita, and this dives us into where I sort of was pitching to you what we thought we'd talk about today. And that is that I think this is the greatest move. And I've written this down because I want to make sure I touch every base. But it's the greatest move in the history of the Gold Coast Tweed, Giants, Seagulls, Chargers, Titans, Rugby League franchise team club organisation. Because they've tried getting the big name in before. I don't think they've ever picked up a guy who's 20 years old and considered basically the best edge forward in rugby league after 30 games. But this move, they had to do. And Mal Meninga, the head of culture, who loves the place so much, he lives in Canberra, he basically invested everything on getting Fifita to the Broncos, to the Titans, sorry. And there's some comments that he's made in the press, and I'll get to him in a second, but I can't fault Mal here because he realises that what they've done, it hasn't worked. What they've tried to do in the past has been a bit of a, we go all in on a bunch of players and hope that it delivers results. And I'm going to go through the sort of the not really a short history because it's 30 years of the Titans/Seagulls, Giants, whatever, doing this. But they can't afford to keep paying overs to players who aren't stars and hoping that it was going to get better. And that is where they've got to really in the last 2 or 3 years even when Brennan came up from Penrith and they brought a whole bunch of players along. But they just very much went, let's pick 3 blokes up at 400-500 and hope they can kind of make us better, as opposed to going all in on one player and hoping, or 2 players and hoping that they'd attract others. Now, they went into this zone with Hayne a few years ago and actually had okay success with Hayne until he didn't want to be there anymore, and we know the story behind that. But the core for me is you don't get better with guys that you're overpaying who are average. You just don't get better. And that has been pretty clear when you look at the history of the Titans. And I've done a bit of a deep dive here. Now, you talked about Ray Herring joining from the Broncos in 91. He didn't even make a mention on my list when I was talking about the recruit in 92, because they picked up Wally Lewis, who was ceremoniously cut from the Broncos at the end of 90. And Wally very much signed with the Giants as a bit of a, well, I'll go make them great kind of move from him. Now, we know that Wally didn't have, he was there for 3 years, but he only played the first 2 seasons with the Giants. In 1992, Wally Lewis was going into his second year at the Giants, or the Seagulls at that stage, sorry. He also added Peter Gill from St George, Mike McLean from Newcastle, Steve Jackson from West, Paul Martin and Brent Todd from the Canberra Raiders, who had just made 3 straight grand finals. And they picked up Dale Shearer from the Broncos as well. Have a guess where they finished the next 4 years.
They finished last, didn't they? I don't think they... Well,
16th in 92, 16th in... 16th in 91, 16th in 92, 16th in 93, and 15th in 94. I'll just double check.
There was improvement.
Marked improvement. But this was the issue, is that you can add all these players and it doesn't necessarily guarantee success. And the killer for the Seagulls at the time was they went very much in on established first graders who they hoped would make them better. But they didn't go anywhere.
There's state of origin reps in that signings too, though. Mike McLean and Steve Jackson, origin players at the time.
Yeah. Well, 92 was a funny year for them. They finished 16th, but they actually won 6 games. I'm looking at Rugby League Project now. That's not a horrible year. 6-15-1. It's not a horrendous year. And if I remember, in 92, they beat the Panthers at the end of the season to stop the Panthers making the finals as defending premiers. So they had something to build on from that. But then they won a grand total of 1 game in 93. And that was the end of Wally at the end of that season. And essentially what happened is, until Phil Economides took over in 97, they hadn't had any success. And they finished 7th in that interesting 7-team final series in 12 teams in 97. But what I'm getting at is that they went down the route of, he's pretty good, he's okay, he's had some success. And they went all in on a bunch of players and it didn't make them better. And they certainly didn't unearth much talent during that time. By 98, they're at...
Western Brothers?
Sorry? The Western Brothers. I think Dunamans were there as well.
Dunamans, yeah.
And anyway, so that was the big foray into the player market as the Giants. We fast forward when the Gold Coast Titans come in 2007. And this was a really interesting recruitment drive from the Titans. They had all this money and they did go pretty big. They actually, I remember talking to you at the time, I think 2 or 3 years afterwards, but they went all in on established stars to try and be as successful as they could straight away. And I remember saying to you, the big worry that I had is not the first year, not the second year, not the third year, not even really the 4th year. It's how are they developing? Is there any intent to develop any stars or any players into that long-term success? They picked up in 2007, Luke Bailey, Scott Prince, Anthony LaFranchi, Preston Campbell, Matt Rogers, Gavin Cooper, Nathan Friend, Brad Myers came back from overseas. And in 2007, they finished 12th. But they were a pretty competitive team that year. In 2008, they finished 13th. And then the payoff happened. In 2009 and 2010, they finished 3rd and 4th. I think it was 2010 and 9, possibly. No, 2010, they got to a game within the grand final.
Mm.
But then that era of players who were all 25, 26, 27 when they signed them, they were no longer the players they were at the end of that period. And so then in 2012, and I'll forgive everyone, I'm just going to go through these signings, but in 2012, they went in again on a very similar trajectory of, we'll go after some big names. They signed Nate Miles, they signed Jamal Idris, Luke Douglas, Bo Champion, Phil Graham, and they debuted Aiden Caesar, who they'd picked up from the Bulldogs. So in 2012, they finished 11th. In 2013, they finished 9th. But then in 14 and 15, they finished 14th. So you can see sort of the progression here is that they can add some players, but the success that they've been able to maintain is not working. It happened again in 2016, mate. They picked up Jared Hayne halfway through the season. And the season they'd been doing pretty well. They had to make it in the finals. They had Nathan Friend join the club, Conrad Hurrell, Chris McQueen, Nathan Peets, Tyrone Roberts, Seb Taylor, David Shillington. Ash Taylor was a big-name signing from your Broncos. Probably the last big-name signing they got from Brisbane.
Well, he was very boom rookie to go at the time.
So he added, they got to 8. They lost to the Broncos, if I remember, in that elimination semi. Then the next 3 years, 15th, 14th, 16th. Now, we know that when Brennan arrived, and I'm sorry, guys, I'm throwing out heaps of names here, but it's just to give you indication of the mass pay middle range money or above middle range money to average players doesn't always result. In 18, they added Jai Arrow, Bryce Cartwright, Michael Gordon, Leone Latu, Mitch Rain. Last year, they had Shannon Boyd, Brian Kelly, Tyrone Peachy, Tyrone Roberts returned, and Callum Watkins. They're all decent names. But unless you've got some top-end talent to put them around, you're treading water. And this is where I really think that the value for the Titans in going after Fifita is he is going to attract, as long as he stays healthy, he's going to attract some very handy talent across the next few years. And this is why I think this is the great move for them, is that maybe they may have learnt finally that you can't invest in average, you've got to go top shelf.
Yeah, no, I agree. But based on what you said, would they maybe been better of going back and getting Phil Economides, getting them to the final?
Well, that's a fair point. Who was the CEO back then as well? That's a good question.
Maybe I reckon Phil would have been cheaper.
Very good point. I actually always wonder what they're paying Mal to be the head of culture up there. That's always an interesting one, because Mal actually came out and on Fox League, this is what he said when he was pressed about whether Fifita's chasing money. These are his quotes. Well, he hasn't. That's how I respond. We sold the club. We sold the future of the club. We are a stable environment. We've got a really strong football department now, and our administration's going gangbusters. Oh, always good word to use. Obviously, we're in an unusual situation when you talk about commercially within our game. We've got a really strong environment with a good coach, a good coaching staff, and good people out of the club. And we sold him on that story. So he didn't come for money, but they sold him on why to join the Titans. What's your view on going all in? I mean, you said from a Broncos point of view, you want to see it. But if you're the Titans, is this the right move for them?
Yeah, different. I think a totally different scenario for the Titans, and that's probably what's lent themselves. To be honest, Broncos might end up in that situation in a year or two as well. But look, sometimes you pay the money, and look, a few the Gold Coast were probably unlucky that a few of those guys that you did mention, they've either lobbed at the coast because something's gone wrong at their other club. They've run into a few issues. So while they sounded good on paper, there's been a few asterisks next to a few of those signings. Someone like an Ash Taylor looked like it was going to be a great signing for the first couple of years, and then he's fallen by the wayside. Obviously, Scott Prince was a great signing at the time until age caught up with him. Look, the benefit of Fifita is that he's young. He looks great early. There's so much upside there. If you're going to take a shot on a player, this is it. Like the similar story with the Cowboys, that over the years they paid overs for a lot of players at the end of their career until things were heading in the right direction, and then they caught fire with a bloke by the name of Jonathan Thurston, who was on the outer at the Bulldogs, really, and lobs in the Cowboys and virtually turns the club around. So as much as you can put all your intel into who you want to sign, sometimes there's a bit of luck involved with it as well. And
the beauty for the Titans is he's 20 years old. Like, they're not signing him at 25, 26. And the comparative player that I'll put out here is that they signed Kevin Proctor from the Storm a few years back. Now, he looked like a top-of-the-line second rower who, as time has gone by, it looks like he's a bit more of a product of a system than being on that level of player. Now, he's a good football player, and when he's been healthy for him, he's actually played quite well, but he didn't improve that club by himself.
No.
And that was because he was at that age. And the beauty of Fifita, and I think the real key here, if you're a Titans fan, is that Fifita is going to be in the Queensland setup for the next however many years. He's going to probably be in the Australian setup for the next however many years. If they show any noticeable improvement next year, and I'm going to get to their signings for next year in a sec, but he becomes an instant magnet for players coming off contract.
100%. Other thing with Fifita that we've seen at the Broncos is that he can literally put a side on his back, win them a game. Not every week, but there'll be moments of brilliance where team looks like there's going nowhere, and he'll pull out 2 or 3 big plays or big runs, and he'll get the team over the line. And that's no disrespect to Kevin Proctor. They're just things that those type of players don't do what Fifita can do.
Yeah, and that's the beauty, again, of what Mal's looked at here is I need impact. I need game changer. And based on the market, this is the guy, and they went all in. Just quickly, I'm going to give you what the Titans 17 kind of looks like next year. The important things to note is that not only is Fifita signed, but in the process, it allows the Titans to get rid of a lot of, it's a harsh word, but dead weight in terms of contracts that just aren't giving them value at the moment. These are the guys that are either going or are likely to go from the Titans. You've got Shannon Boyd, who signed on a massive deal, who apparently has left by now. Bryce Cartwright's in Sydney, not coming back. Joe Arrow's on his way to the Bunnies. Nathan Peets is off contract. Ryan James apparently going to the Raiders. They've also got Kevin Proctor off contract, Tyrone Roberts off contract. Jared Wallace and Tyrone Peachy both have a contract for next year, but who knows if they'll be around. You do the math on those contracts and you go 1.25 for Fifita is such a better investment than paying 2 or 3 of those guys the same money.
Yeah. Apart from probably Jai Arrow, there's not a name there I think that you'd be crying over that they're not going to be there. So
correct. So to get to the team, what they look like they're going to be next year. Again, I might have missed some players through the cracks here or whatever, but AJ Brimson straight back into fullback. For Corey Thompson, one wing, Philip Sammy on the other. Your centres are Kelly and probably Peachy if you decide that he's on an edge. And now he hasn't been great there, but he probably is sticking around. He shows things from time to time. Personally, I think his best position is 13, but I don't know if they're going to play him there. The halves, well, Ash Taylor's 6 or 7. I think he should be at 7. I don't like him at 6. Jamal Fogarty showed that he's okay. They've also got Tanner Boyd, who they're turning into a hooker for some reason, and a young kid called Toby Sexton. Have you heard much about him?
I haven't seen anything of him. I've heard a few reports, but don't know a lot about him.
Okay, but then you get to the forward pack, and this is looking handy. Fodawaker and SASA up front. At the moment, Aaron Clark's the 9, maybe for the future. I don't know if they've got anything else in the system there, but he's serviceable. I don't mind him. He's a bit busy. Then you got David Fifita and Suaalii on the edges with Beau Fermor as another option in the back row there. Happy days. Big Tino is just looking like a better player every single week. And I actually think they'll probably be playing him at 13 is my guess, to allow him to stay around the middle. And then you got Jared Wallace if he sticks around on the bench, Sam Lasone, and the likes of Mitch Rainey, who has a contract for next year as well. He's serviceable if he's as your backup hooker. I mean, that's just the bones of a team and a squad there. Now,
we could interest them in a Brodie Croft.
Well, why not? I actually thought he was one of your better defensive players the other night compared to 2 weeks ago when he didn't want to tackle anything. I didn't mind what I saw from him last week, actually. There's a bit more care factor coming out against your old team also can be a factor. But that's not a bad little group of players there for the Titans. Now, I'm not saying it's top 8 bound, but I get excited if I'm a Gold Coast fan.
Oh, there's plenty of upside. Yeah, it's as far as being, if you're a Coast fan, you're feeling pretty positive about the future. And it's just how they've got to get the development of that next crop of players coming through. Those 18, 19, 20-year-olds,
They've
got to develop properly so that they're ready to go, so they don't kind of reach that expiry date that you've mentioned previously. So
I just, again, if I go back to the 20-year-old factor for Fifita, he's going to attract a lot of players. He really is. And Big Tino as well, who's the same age. I'll tip my lid to the Titans. This is the biggest wave they've made, I think, ever. Going back to even the Giants days and the Seagulls days. And it had to happen.
The other thing is that with the Coast, throughout their history, there's always been, because it's somewhat of a transient town that people over the years haven't grown up. There's a lot of people move to the Coast and already have teams, but there's, people go to school there and grow up. A person like Fifita, who went to school on the Coast,
Keeper boy,
is something that locals, they can hang their hat on. I remember when the Titans and they signed your Preston Campbells and Cartwright was the coach, and I know there was a vibe there that it just wasn't a Gold Coast or even a Queensland feel. I think going with Fifita from the Coast, Queensland origin player as your kind of flagship player for the club is another great move, and even from a marketing point of view.
And on that, and this is going to hurt you as a Broncos fan, but this is why the timing of this is so awesome. If you're Gold Coast, Brisbane are this way. You're not necessarily if you're the Gold Coast, you're not doing this, but you kind of here, and this is an opportunity. It really is, and good luck to the Titans if they're smart enough to capitalise on this from a marketing point of view.
Yeah, and like I said at the start of it's a great time for the Gold Coast to act, because Brisbane have lost that bargaining chip of, hey, we're the Broncos, come and play for us, you'll play finals football. For 3/4 of the time the Broncos have been around, they could hang their hat on and say, come and play under Wayne Bennett, which is something that you're not selling Seabold to players at the moment, come and play under Anthony Seabold. That's just not happening. And it wouldn't even happen if it was Kevin Walters or whoever it was. You're not selling the coach as a part of, come to us for less because we'll offer you this.
And we haven't even got really to the coaches. There's always going to be talk about whether I didn't want to play under Seabold and all this stuff. But the guy who we haven't even mentioned his name, Justin Holbrook, I mean, he hasn't stopped doing handstands since this news came in. I'm surprised he didn't coach the game on the weekend doing a handstand in the coach's box. I mean, he should be it hasn't all gone smoothly for him since he took what was then a most available job. And I pose this question to you, given the carnage that we've seen, even since we've had the last podcast, Dean Pay's gone as well. If you're Justin Holbrook, would you have taken, hindsight's lovely, but taken the Titans job if you'd known that Canterbury was going to open, the Warriors was going to open, Brisbane potentially would have opened, the Cowboys, obviously Paul Green's gone as well. This isn't the one you would have taken, but the way things have sort of worked out is that you've ended up with two of the best young forwards in the game. You've got enough players around the traps that you can actually start coaching. Life's changed remarkably for those two coaches in the space of about 3 months, hasn't it?
Oh, unbelievable. Yeah, no, it's like we said, football's a funny thing and things change very rapidly. So no, he's gone from probably thinking what's he got himself into to, well, how good's the Gold Coast? Just change the name to the Lifesavers and happy days.
Iron Men, mate. Iron Men. That was the name I put forward, remember? Gold Coast Iron Men. It made so much sense they didn't use it. Anyway, that's Fifita joining the Gold Coast Titans. Fantastic move for them. We'll be back after the break to talk about round 12. It's coming up, and a couple of things here on Not The Footy Show.
Not The Footy Show.
And I got your headphones anyway, so great. Yeah. There's a police operation somewhere around here.
That's all right.
I'll just wait for the helicopter to disappear.
I've got a helicopter here too.
Hang on. Is that remember the old Tommy Rodonicus joke from the 90s? He was in, they were at Campbelltown doing the game and they had someone ring up. I've told you this story, I'm sure. They had someone, someone give a report from Auckland and they said, it's a lovely night in Auckland. The full moon's out and the Warriors are playing great football. And Tommy goes, I just looked out the box. It's a full moon here too. One of the great moments of Tommy Rodonicus. Okay, we're back. It's episode 220 of Not The Footy Show. Matty Duncan is with myself, Warrick Nicolson. We've given you the David Fifita to the Titans spiel and how happy everybody is except for Matty over there. But very, very fiscally responsible response from you in regards to Fifita. I like that, mate. Even though you have currently, I think, if you check out Matty's Instagram, it's at Mr. Peninsula. He actually burnt a Brisbane Broncos effigy of David Fifita the other day. It's compelling viewing.
Who? David who?
David who? Isn't he play for Wakefield Trinity in the UK?
I know on was, but I'll tell you the first time I come across David Fifita, there'd obviously been a lot of talk how good of a young player he was coming through the schoolboys competition. And at the start of that season, what year did he make his debut? It was 2018?
17 or 18.
17 or 18. There was talk that he was going to be the Broncos bolter on the bench, just a kid. He didn't make that team. And then there was talk. I had the role as the Redcliffe Dolphins ground announcer that year. And round one was against South Logan Magpies, who were a feeder to the Broncos. And the talk that Fifita was going to play for the South Logan Magpies. So we get there. I was like, this is going to be good. He ran out playing for the Mel Meninga Cup South Logan team that day against 18-year-olds. So how do you think the old Dolphins that fronted up probably had a few quiet drinks over and been partying and rock up at 10 a.m. and got to face David Fifita? So he absolutely tore them apart. So that was the first time I spotted him. I thought, the opposition isn't probably top shelf here, but he just looked like an absolute genius playing 18-year-old boys.
That's funny. That's 2 years ago and he's 20.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's impressive. Let's get to round 12, mate. We're going to give our tips, people. If you're following the Postman's tips, they came back this year after a year off. He's not doing horrendously. 6 from 8 last week. You can just get him at wnicholson.com every Wednesday night. But 6 from 8 takes me to 58 from 88 for the season. So I am a tick under 66% for the year, which I'll take that.
Yeah.
That's not horrendous. Mind you, I still got... I picked the Dragons last week. What am I doing? It's just... Never learn. Speaking of the Dragons, they actually play the Bunnies in one of the more snoozy, festy Thursday night football games I can think of until I get to Friday night football, which is Broncos and Sharks. But first things first. Rabbitohs actually haven't been bad the last couple of weeks, I haven't thought. They've shown enough from...
Rabbitohs are a team that I kind of think they're going better than... And every time I look at the table, I'm like, well, they're running 10th. They're not going that great, but I feel like they are going okay, but they're just not heading up the ladder.
For the last 2 games, they lost to Newcastle, where they were out of the game for 65 minutes and almost snuck it and won it. They should have won last week against Canberra with the possession they had, but Canberra's defence was pretty handy and it held them out. So even though the Dragons have ridden the ship a little bit, I mean, the other day they've only got 4 wins, but Bunnies only have 5. I am leaning towards the Bunnies here on Thursday night to probably put a final nail in the Dragons' coffin for 2020.
Yeah, I'm with you there, Was. I just think the Rabbitohs, as I said, are going better than the Dragons.
Yeah. Then Friday at the SCG, actually, the Tigers play the Warriors. The Warriors pushed the Roosters last week. Now, I didn't see the game, but my nephew was sending me updates, and he's going, the Warriors are going to win. The Warriors are going to win. I'm good on you. I didn't look at the scores. Yeah, they almost did. Did you see any of this match or not?
I've seen bits and pieces. I work with a big Roosters fan who was distraught that the Warriors were so close.
Yeah.
Look, they had a dig, but what I found with the Warriors, they have a dig and then they have a couple of weeks off. And look, there's scenarios why it's hard for them to get up every week, but I'd say I've got a feeling this will be an off week and Tigers might pump them. Yeah,
Tigers showed plenty against Para last Thursday night.
I've liked the Tigers since the start of the year. I've just had a feeling, though, they just seem to be the right mix as a team that probably can't that next level down off the top teams, but I had them as a lock for a top 8 team this year. So don't let me down, Tigers.
Yeah, I had them in 8, just above that classic 9th spot for them with the Tigers as well. We're recording this before they do team lists on Tuesday. You won't hear it till after the team lists are done, but I'm very fascinated to see if he brings Luke Brooks back into the starting team. When he came on last week, it was out of necessity when Dewey had to go off. And something I noticed is that he then pushed Billy Walters into a 13 spot, who just was completely and utterly wasted for the remainder of the game. I don't know if you watched it at all closely, but he was playing the Elijah Taylor role. Now, Elijah Taylor tackled everything that moved, but offered nothing in attack. Billy Walters' game, from what I've seen, has been you get the ball in his hand as much as you can, and he'll just make things happen. And they took him out of the game to bring Brooks back into it. And I just don't think you jump off that train yet if you're Michael Maguire. I think you put Brooks back on the bench and you say you earn your spot here rather than just be gifted it back because of injury last week. So Tigers for me. Then we're talking about the big Friday night game. What are the crowds been like for the Broncos? I know there's only X amount of people allowed to come, but are they actually getting a decent crowd along?
Mate, I honestly don't know where they are with the crowds and the restrictions, and I believe there's been a couple of games where there has been still tickets available that haven't been taken up. I believe so. I'm not 100%, but I don't think it's been great. But look, this might get them back and replay of the 1997 Super League Grand Final.
The forgotten game, as according to rugby league history, you just cannot ever see it anywhere. It's never shown in highlights. I don't get it. Anyway, Sharkies I'm going with because, well, I'm not getting burnt by Brisbane. I got burnt against them against the Titans and Warriors a few weeks back.
Well, injury crisis again at the Broncos. Croft's gone this week. Yes, Milford's out. Boy, Darius back to fullback.
Yep.
So whether they give Gamble a shot at 5'8", I don't know.
He looked gassed playing 9 last week.
Yeah, well, there was one of them, and I've seen a lot of Tyson Gamble play come through the grades at Redcliffe. Look, I don't think he's ever played dummy half. He's not a dummy half. He's not a very good dummy half. If that was going to be the plan, like it's just a waste of an interchange if you're going to play him there. So, look, play him at 5'8" or sit him at home. But,
Corey Pakes is the other one because he could go back to the halves and Isaac Luke's back from suspension, I think, this week.
Yeah, Pakes played halfback exclusively for Redcliffe last year. But the Broncos had made the decision this year that they see him as a future number 9 with Dearden as a future 7. So, look.
And Turpin could be back as well. Again, the annoyance of having to record 2 hours before, as in from just purely the team list point of view, he might be in the team. So.
See where they go. But I know part of the reason McCullough getting moved on was they see Pakes as their long-term number 9.
Okay, so do you think the Broncos turn it around?
Yes. They think of the Pearl scoring tries in the 97 grand final. Darius back to the glory days at fullback. And Tommy Dearden steering them around. Payne Haas saying, well, I'm actually the best forward at the Broncos anyway. What a boil over.
I would like to see the kick it to Coates game plan reinstitutionalised after it worked beautifully a couple of weeks back. I haven't used it since.
One of the craziest things I've ever seen, they did it relentlessly that night until the last 5 minutes where they had to actually field position. And then they said, well, no, we'll go the other side. And they have not gone back since.
What's going on?
It is one of the craziest things I've ever seen. But anyway, on Coach Seabold.
Super Coach Seabold. Get it right. Cronulla Sharks for me because I just refuse to pick Brisbane. Saturday afternoon, the Roosters and the Titans. I think we might get a bit of a bounce back from the Roosters this week.
Bounce back. I want to be with the bounce back.
Yeah, the 50-point bounce back. Then Raiders head to North Queensland to take on the Cowboys. Do we put any stock in the Cowboys' performances the last 2 weeks?
No, they'll be. I think the up and about. Raiders hitting back. I think Cowboys be like, oh yeah, Josh Hannay. We're done. Who are we getting next year? Raiders time.
I'm very interested to see what Stewart does at fullback because Rapana can give you the runs, but he's not a playmaker by any. He doesn't have a pass in him. I'm very interested to see whether they give Nick Kotrick a go at number 1. It's only for a couple of weeks if Clockstead's coming back, but I just think Canberra needs something different. And who knows, John Bateman might be actually named for his first game of the season. The last game on Saturday is Manly.
Bateman last week.
Bateman got on. Yeah. Well, the funny story about that is I actually know a couple of guys that work at the Raiders in the media department. Now, I was out for a run on Friday when I did the tweet because everyone knows my background. Obviously, I will look at stuff that clubs do and sort of kind of work out, are they actually thinking about what they're posting sometimes? And I saw Johnny Bonnet running in the background. Obviously, he wasn't going to play. I think Stewart came out about an hour later and announced he wasn't playing. But the long story short is that Bateman jumped on my tweet because I tagged him in it, and he said, I was just running off the field to take a slash, which I thought was quite good, pretty funny. And then one of the Raiders media team jumped on there and with a classic dodgy Photoshop job, moved him from the background to the foreground and responded and said, I don't know what you're talking about. He's training and all that kind of stuff. It was good. It was good gear. So I'm happy to give the Raiders some...
strong social media lately, the Raiders.
So I ended up having a chat with one of them about half an hour afterwards. Well done. It's what you got. This is the kind of stuff that I think clubs need to jump on a little bit more. There's just opportunities there that you can just have a bit of fun with. It doesn't have to always be edgy or just dour down the middle. And it doesn't have to be crazy. Like, you don't have to copy everything you're seeing overseas. It's just a matter of going, let's have a bit of fun with something. And that was a good example. So well done to the Raiders. I'm going them as well. Manly against Penrith. Interesting matchup because I think Penrith have gone okay, but I know they're 9 wins from 11 games, but their football doesn't inspire me of late. They are just setting up in attacking situations and not actually going for it. And I've picked Manly. There you go.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. No, I just think the Panthers, like you said, they're winning games, which at the end of the day is all you got to do, but it just doesn't seem sustainable. I think Manly, the bet of the weekend.
Yep. Then Bulldogs up against Parramatta. Kieran Foran plays and the Bulldogs can win games. If Kieran Foran isn't on the field, then they will not win games. Not that they've won many games, but he is the only reason they look likely in anything they do. Parramatta, they should get Madison. He should be able to back up and play after his head knock last week. Look, I don't mind what I've seen from the Dogs, but the effort they showed last week to win, fantastic, but it's not going to make any difference because Parramatta will put a score on here.
Correct.
And then the final game, Melbourne against the Knights. Poor old Newcastle, for the third time this year, they lost 2 players in the first half an hour. This game, they could not find another gear late on to come back in. They dropped a match they should not have dropped against Canterbury. Melbourne getting pretty much 8 or 9 days off between games. They'll rock up to Sunshine Coast Stadium, which is not too far from where you are, my friend. And
not at all.
I think they will put a number on the Knights, and Adam O'Brien will find out that when things get tough, they get real tough, because it looked like he did the old Craig Bellamy impersonation at halftime with his team, and they came out and dropped the ball twice in the first 2 sets. And it didn't work, is the best way I can describe it. And he doubled down in the press conference and basically said they were a bunch of entitled individuals apart from 2 players. Yeah, it's risky this early on when your team, I think, has given you a lot so far this year, and he's gone on that Bellamy zone. And I know he's a disciple, but
the respect of the players to play to push in with that, and I don't think he's there yet. So, interesting. And I think the Storm will respond from probably their worst half of the year last week versus the Broncos. I think they will come out firing in the first half this week.
Yep. And Cam Smith, I was a bit harsh on him at the start of the year. I thought first few weeks after COVID, and I went, you get his best every couple of weeks. It used to be every week, but the last month he has been spectacular. Yes. I would like to see a team realise that if you stay off Cam Smith, he's going to hurt you. Get out and put him on his rear and see how the 36-year-old legs or 37-year-old legs go then. I actually am surprised he hasn't been targeted at all by other teams. I know he can hold. I know he's great. He's one of the greats, and he handles himself well, and he never seems to get hurt. I'm not saying hurt him. I'm just saying make him pay for pottering around the rucks, because if you let him dictate terms for the last 20 years, we've seen the results of that. It doesn't end well for your team generally.
No.
A couple of things we did need to get through, mate, and that is the rules changing. Now, one thing that old Peter V'landys has been pretty audacious in is he changes the rules if he decides they need to be changed.
He sits at home, as I don't like that. They're changing.
Joseph Suaalii, a week ago, he was off to rugby union despite he had a contract that hadn't been lodged yet with South. Union's got him, they've poached him, etc., etc., etc. Now, Rusty Crowe's come in and had a chat, and he's staying at Souths, we think, but under the proviso that he can debut next year, even though he'd only be 17. Now, the rules got changed, is it 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, to make sure you had to be 18?
Be 18, yeah.
Debut in the NRL. What's your view on changing the rules to effectively stop a player going to rugby union?
I've never been a fan of specifically changing a rule, apart from when we moved Kempsey to Queensland.
Bowerville, wasn't it? Sorry.
Bowerville, yes. Well, I think he debuted it. Well, I think Kempsey was the club or whatever. Anyway.
Finally enough, you're obviously talking about Greg Inglis, but I'm friends with someone that he obviously knows. And on his post on Insta the other day, it was back home at Maxville.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay. Go Queensland. Yes. Sorry. Yes. You were saying.
Although Kenny Nagus was from Bundaberg. But anyway, that's another story.
Peter Sterling from Toowoomba.
Very true. Very true. We could go on all that.
There's a song about it. I'm sure I'll play that later.
Where is Sydney? That's in Queensland. Silver Fiji? That's in Queensland. Where is Bowerville? That's in Queensland. Queensland's everywhere.
Yeah, to change the rule, look, 17 to 18. As the rule, I think, it's a 17 to 18. You've got to draw a line somewhere, but there's some individual players that obviously would be more ready at 17 than some players are at 19. So, look, if it keeps me away from rugby union, look, I'm probably okay with it. I don't like rugby.
It can't be a one-off. They've just got to change it.
No,
it's blanket, change it, gone. Yeah. And then there's another one that PBL's been involved with. Apparently, you never know what you believe when it comes to the papers. I mean, some of the best stuff that I've seen in the last 24 hours, the headline is so-and-so linked to so-and-so. And all it is a journo talking on the footy show about what he thinks might be a good idea. Not that it's actually based on even remotely anything at all. It's just, I'm really struggling with that level of where reporting's going to. But anyway, Sonny Bill Williams is coming back to Australia.
Before you go on, a challenge for you. Name some of those great teams a couple of podcasts ago, the great Broncos teams, great union conference. Can you do your best team of 17-year-olds to debut in the NRL? Is there enough over the journey?
It's a good question. I'll write that down. So 17 or 18 or just 17?
Well, ideally 17, but if you can change the rule along the way if it's not going to work and you need to add an 18-year-old.
So basically 17-year-old debutants, the best team that I can think of in a recent time. Okay.
Probably be very back heavy, but you might struggle for some forwards, but do your best.
Well, there's the challenge put down to me. Thank you, sir. Sonny Bill was a pretty decent 17 or 18-year-old, if I recall. He's coming back because the Toronto Wolfpack are in all sorts of danger of not only not playing this season, which they're not doing, but never playing again. Now, there was overtures that apparently the Roosters, they didn't go after Sonny Bill straight away, okay? Now, I'm just going to set the record straight here and do my own little bit of, journalistic integrity reporting. They wanted the solution. They desperately wanted the solution. They thought, we've got Luke Keary and we've got Kyle Flanagan, but they're not good enough. I mean, what's Keary done for us lately? I mean, he's not even wanting $1 million a year. So we'll get in the solution, Josh McCrone to play 7 for the Roosters for the rest of the year. I cannot believe Uncle Nick didn't agree with me. What is he thinking?
I don't know. He's lost the plot.
He has. So he settled for Sonny Bill, which is fine. Look, it's the way fans are. I have zero problems with this. He's 36 years old. He's going to come.
Look, the Woodbury playing for Toronto. Look, no issue here at all.
I hate the comment. You should be going to the Warriors. Well, why? Why should he? If he's earned the right to pick wherever he wants to go. He's done that his own way pretty much since Chock Mundine told him to go somewhere. And I don't have any issues here. He's got history with the Roosters. Uncle Nick loves him. The players love him. He's going to come in. There's an opportunity there because Victor Radley's gone for the year. I've got no dramas, and they can pay him whatever because it's the same thing. Like Canberra just picked up Harry Naira. You may not agree with that from a bunch of reasons, but They used the John Bateman money that they'd been given as a result of the test allowance when a player gets hurt and misses half a season. This is just how it works, people. And I've been asked actually in another forum to go into why I don't think that the case against the Roosters cheating the cap is watertight. I don't think it is at all. It comes down to how you use your cap. Are you smarter than other teams and how you use your cap? And if you are, no dramas. I know the Telegraph released like a top 50 player rich list that's all complete hearsay and guesswork. Haven't looked at a single thing of it, but it does bring that whole question of what salaries players are getting. But there was a really key comment, and I think I've got the audio here, but Paul Gallen on 100% Footy the other night.
The reason I stayed at Cronulla, and I had my manager say to me at the time, which I often say now about young players who are looking to sign big money contracts, is that if you're good enough, if you are the player you think you are, the player you want to be, the money will come. It will be there one day. Whether it comes in third parties, whether it comes in your next deal, the money will come. And that's where David Fifita's at the moment. David Fifita, the money will come for him. He's young enough and good enough to play for a long, long time. The money will come to him no matter what, no matter where he's at. So I think this decision that he's made at the moment is based on playing roster and based on coaching.
Did you see that? Do you watch that show?
I don't know.
Neither do I, but I saw it through the Twitter feed, and that's sometimes the best things that will come out of there. And he spoke about how he could have gone to Manly at the end of 2007. Now, if he'd gone to Manly, then he would have won a couple of competitions, etc. But he had a really key comment where he said, one of the things that I get impressed upon me was, if you are good enough, you will get your money. And he kept repeating that. You will get your money. You will get paid your money. It's going to happen. You're going to get your money. And he used the term third parties. Now, this is where I think the anger, if you're going to have anger against the way that salary cap works, is not what are teams paying players under the salary cap. It's what is going into this third party element. Because if Paul Gallen is openly saying that the reason he got his money in the end was third parties, not because of what he was sitting on the salary cap, you can't always point the finger at the Roosters.
No.
And it really bugs me when I think of just the classic example is the poor old Tigers. They had Mitchell Moses, Luke Brooks, Aaron Woods and James Tedesco come off contract at the same time. They kept Luke Brooks. They lost Aaron Woods to the Bulldogs. They lost James Tedesco to the Roosters, and they lost Mitchell Moses to Parramatta. So they had a lot of money to spend, and they went and bought Josh Reynolds.
Yeah.
Now, you can complain all you like about who the Roosters are signing, but if the team that just had all this money to spend goes out and spends all that money on Josh Reynolds, you can't tell me categorically that the Roosters are cheating the cap. They just spend it better than you guys do.
Better. Yeah, exactly. So, no, I agree. But there is the issue. Sometimes some of those clubs just can't attract those players that they want, and then, well, you've got to pay overs for mediocre players. What's your thought? You're a big US sports fan, as I am. Obviously, the salaries of players in US sports are much more transparent. Those whole contracts, you know, how many years, the dollars, everything like that. They don't have the same, well, some sports do, but what are your thoughts on being more transparent with what the actual contracts are rather than what we get at the moment, which is media kind of speculating and coming up with a figure and without third parties involved? Is there something that we can do along those lines that I think would create a lot more faith in the system with the supporters?
Unless there's a way to publicly declare the third party factor, then it's irrelevant what is getting publicly put out there from a salary cap point of view. It really is.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. You'd have to include that third party arrangement. Yeah.
That would highlight the inequality that there is in the way rosters are put together, because you are going to have a ridiculous amount of third-party payments involved from club to club. Now, that is what the NRL deems to be acceptable. So if they deem it that way, you can't complain about the cap. You just can't, because that's how the way that they're letting it operate. And I've told this story a number of times in the last couple of years, even when I was at the NRL, when you would have teams done for salary cap breaches. They would happen in October at the end of the season. Now, I can't categorically say that this is 100% fact. This is how I observed it. This is how I saw that they did it. This is how I understood it. It would take until the end of the season before the salary cap auditor system would realise whether a team had broken the salary cap or not. Just ponder that for 2 seconds when you want to complain about salary caps. Because if the governing body doesn't know before the season's begun if a team is on a trajectory to break the cap or not, then every game that is then played.
No.
So whether they're public or not, and I think they should be. That's my personal view, is I think they should be, because one of the great takeaways I have from the American sport following is, yeah, it's great to know what a bloke's on, but at the end of the day, his performance is really all that matters.
Yeah.
And you get past that, and we don't live in the bubble of those one team towns and whatever. And so that same viewpoint that we have here in Australia is not the same on those sports. We might follow them really closely, like the NHL and the Major League Baseball and stuff, but we're not in that 24/7 news cycle like they are over there. So yes, the scrutiny on players that are overpaid, it exists anywhere, but I don't think it's a be all and end all, A, solution, or B, negative for this to be public. That's probably my view. It'd be nice to have them. It'd be nice to see, but unless the system that is governing all of this is as transparent, what's the point?
No, fair point. Good point.
Anyway, that's the show, everybody. We are done. 25 minutes. Yeah, good one was. I think we've ended up going for about an hour. It's been a joy to talk to you again, Matty Duncan. I love that fan. You've got fans in the stands behind you.
Yeah, very good.
Very, very good. And I like the colour motif you got going in that room.
It's a bit plain.
It's all right. I've got the same walls. I've just got things in front of the walls.
What's that a jersey you've got framed there? What's up?
For the people watching on YouTube, there you go. So it is a signed Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds jersey from the year I was in Canada. I covered the Greyhounds for a website. This is back in '99, so yes, I'm old. And they signed it all. And they ended up making the Western Conference Finals of the OHL that year. They didn't win a thing though.
The Greyhounds.
The Greyhounds. And they actually changed that logo, sorry people, about a year afterwards to go back to the old style. This is another example of where the 90s logos just sort of took off everywhere, and all the ones that have been around for 20 years, they got rid of and they put the caricature in, and then realised that nobody would buy them. So they went back to the old style.
But now they're kind of cool again, the caricatures.
Well, this is the question. So anyway, people, that is the episode. Been enjoyed having me, Duncan. You can follow him at Mr. Peninsula on Instagram and Twitter. Am I correct?
Yes, you don't get a lot of content, but you can follow me there. So
that's all right. Nobody even is aware that Rob Cox is on Not The Footy Show, because that long promised I'm going to promote the show. Yeah, it's never happened, Cocksmith. Fantastic. We will have him back on the show at some stage. We're actually only 6 likes from 500 on Facebook. So if you haven't liked us on Facebook, facebook.com/NRL Podcast. I'm posting a lot more than I used to.
Well, 17-year-olds team was.
Yes, you want that. Okay. All right. Well, I might even put that up on the Facebook page for some people to put some ideas forward on players that should be considered for that. And that is the podcast. Me, Duncan, over there. Warrick Nicolson here. At me, at NRL Tweet on Twitter, at W Nicolson, other places. And we will speak to you next time on Not The Footy Show. Have a good afternoon, evening, and week. And I hope for your team does not suck quite as much this weekend, young Matthew.
Thank you, Oz. Thanks for the listeners, and catch us again soon.
All right. See you later, everybody. Do you want to throw in a Pepsi?
Pepsi.
Not The Footy Show.
Fee-fi-fo-fum, fee-fi-fo-fum, hee-hi-ho-hum. I'm a most amazing guy, am I?
It's people's escape, it's people's relaxation, and we need to do everything in order to continue that great tradition of
Not The Footy Show.
Pepsi.